Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 131 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co-host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we are going to be talking a lot more about Raid and Mythic Plus testing and the loot and just like all of those things that have just all come out at the same time.
Yes, yes,
We got
yes.
some tuning changes as well. Some major shakeups to a couple of classes that were getting new toys that have been now removed. But before
Yes,
we
yes,
get
yes, yes,
into
yes.
all of that, how is Raid this weekend,
So it's Nathria, so it was easy. We basically we killed everything but like the middle bosses, so like the Beast Lord wing, um, on night one, and then also went and did a jailer mount and a Sylvanas mount run all
Jesus,
on Tuesday. I
that's
mean, we
insane.
we we crushed, yeah. Our Sylvanas mount run was a little scuffed, but we one shot it, which was nice.
Yep.
Jailer, I think Jailer we one shot and like three healed too. So like on non-fated weeks, the
Right.
boss is just falls over.
Yeah.
But no, it was an easy raid. And then we went back Thursday, cleaned up the rest of Faded Nathria, and just yeah, it was joke of a day. I mean, it was very nice. Like Nathria, for whatever reason, is like you get really through. I don't think. I mean, to be fair, I don't think there's any one boss that like was that bad. Plus, moats
Stone
were on some
Legion
very good bosses.
generals.
Yeah, I mean, Stone Legion wasn't terrible. I don't know. We wiped maybe two or three times, but
We had a terrible time on Stone Legion generals this week.
oh really?
Yeah. We actually all right. So context, right? We're a CE team. We have a roster that's fairly large. It's like 26 people right now. Um,
Okay.
we had 5 people post out that we knew about. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, we can handle that. That's why we run a roster of this size.
Right, right, right.
Then we had 2 more people post that they were going to be late.
Oh no.
So for
Oh
those that are
no.
doing the math, that is 19, which is not enough for Mythic.
Yeah,
Which is what, like 7 people.
that's
Um,
crazy.
so we had a former raider online, and we grabbed him, and we went into jailer, and we actually like almost killed it in 3 pulls, and then took another like 4 pulls after that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, and then the people who were late got back,
Gotcha.
and we
Gotcha.
went and did Castle Nathria, which actually was going fairly smoothly up until Stone Legion Generals,
Yeah.
which just like took an hour for no specific reason.
It's
Just
like yeah.
just like general nonsense in the intermission pretty much. Like um
Yeah.
the big one was accidentally pushing the commando into its shield phase uh before we were expecting it. So
Okay.
then people weren't able to swap in time and it explodes and wipes the raid.
Yeah.
Some issues with the interrupts spawning so far away that the nameplate didn't show up and it just did its
Okay.
initial cast. Like we had one. So you know where like Renethal is in the back next to Denathrius's
Yeah.
door. We had one spawn there,
Really? Okay. Yeah. We did not have any that far away.
and
That's
so
crazy.
it didn't like it spawned right at the end of phase 2, right? So the boss is
Hmm.
over there. It spawns next to the boss, next to Renethal. We all move out, and it just like gets overlooked that there's one there. Like the ranged are already out of range of it, so the nameplate doesn't
Yeah.
show up, and it just gets a
Oh, that's
cast
awful.
off and kills us.
Yeah. No,
And
I mean, we didn't get any of those. Did you keep soaks on, by the way?
no,
Okay. Yeah.
we did we did double affixes. So we did the skip. We did double affixes on Shriekwing and Sledgefist.
Yeah.
And then we went to Stone Legion Generals, and it's just like between that and the jailer, we wrapped that up with like an hour and a half left in raid, and we were like, instead of pulling to Nathrius, we are going to go and just clear the rest of the raid, which we
Yeah.
more or less did. We've got Kael'thas and Council still up, but
That's not too
Kael'thas
bad.
is going to be like a pull, and then Council is. I mean, honestly, maybe we don't even pull them. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
People already have their hymnals. Like, we've got a full hymnal group.
yeah.
So I
I mean,
don't know that there's a reason for us to go.
yeah. I mean, council is barrier, so it's not terrible.
Yeah,
Barrier soaks, so like technically you just turn off soaks if you
yeah,
really want and just do
yeah,
barrier. So yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, that's yeah. We got lucky with sort of the double affixes because moats are really good. Like our Enerva
yeah,
kill, we didn't move Enerva. Like we just
yeah,
kept Enerva
yeah.
like where she
Same.
stood.
It's so
I was like,
wild.
it's so funny how good like some affixes are and how like soaks are just awful.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
just generally terrible.
yeah,
So I had soaks on Sludge Fist was like the problem is you have to like learn the new time. Like I think we
yeah.
don't talk about it. You just have to learn the new timing for like when to
Yep.
do the spells. You're not dispelling as like the AoEs going out and you kill people. So
Yep. I
yeah.
mean, we ended up like on our kill, Sludge Fist just saying, hey, don't soak this one. Like it's gonna expire, just don't soak it.
Yeah. That's
And
what we basically say, like, for any soaks, don't like if you're near one, good. If you're not, do not run across the map to get it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
just skip it. Yeah.
yeah.
Make it so it doesn't exist.
And that is like, so what we ended up doing on that is we did our dispels after the chains disappear. Like you break the pillar, chains go away for like 8 seconds. That's when we did the
Hmm.
dispels.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Because there's no positional requirements there. You can just go and soak things and not worry about it. And it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I see you don't have too much left to finish up
We
tonight
have
then. So,
we have Denathrius, who we have not yet killed.
oh, really?
We have actually only cleared one of the end bosses on Fated. We had like
Oh,
we had a heart wrenching like 2% wipe on Jailer on
uh-huh.
Fated. It was just I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was Defile.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but like it's been kind of a mess. I'm so ready for season 4 to be over. I'm
Gotcha.
so done with it.
I think our raid has like what's next? Sanctum's next? I think Sanctum is the last one where we have people that need specific boss kills to finish our quest. Like I need
Yeah,
Sylvanas.
I
I think
think
we're
we're
the
down to everybody just needs end bosses,
gotcha.
except for
Yeah.
me. I need Painsmith and
Yeah. I
yeah.
hope we just go right to Sylvanas this week.
Eh,
Um,
I mean, not to get too off in the week. Like we tried to take this season more chill because like we're just
yeah.
coming off of progression of Sepulcher, and that was wrong.
Yeah.
We should have been more serious and been more like progression, because then we would have already had all our stuff knocked out, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't have.
Wouldn't be still working on it.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, cool. Well, I mean, hopefully tonight goes well for you. Not too
yeah,
bad, but yeah, we had a decent week this week. So, well, cool. Maybe we'll get into some news. There wasn't much outside of our main topic, like you mentioned, going through a lot of the new beta stuff that dropped, but there's a couple things from retail that came out, and actually Wrath Classic. So, little mini update on Wrath Classic is Blizzard did fix the Battle for Undercity quest line. So I think we talked about this probably 2 weeks ago. I've said this is my favorite quest line ever in all of WoW. It's the first time they did a cinematic like inside the game,
yeah,
like while you were questing. So it's a pretty big, just general like history point for WoW. But it's notoriously buggy. The entire quest, I think they shut off in original Wrath, like the patch after the launch patch, because
yeah.
people had so many issues. And then they did something similar here. However, this week they posted that they did fix it. So there's still a couple of issues with like if you're in the middle of progressing through the Battle for Undercity quest, like and it broke for you, there's still some phasing issues. It looks like you correct it by talking to Dormy back in Trisfall Glades. But yeah, they did end up fixing it. So if you go and try and do the quest now for the first time, it should work without issue,
That's actually
which is
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that they got that one fixed. So, yeah, I mean, like, I don't need to talk more about it, but yeah, Wrath is this quest line is super cool, just in terms of like what it makes you do and how you go through it and everything like that. So it's a lot of fun.
yeah.
Um,
Maybe I'll actually get to see it when I get back to leveling up my rogue.
I hit 80 on my hunter, and I am crushing. Did my Hodir dailies today already. Got to get
Oh
them shoulder
boy.
enchants. Was doing some did a little bit of a heroic world tour last night with some people. So
Nice,
um
nice.
it's it's weird in that, like, I was talking to a buddy who's also playing Wrath, and it's a weird thing. Like Wrath is like I think we talked about this a little bit, but it really feels like the modern game but with the old school flavor. I don't know how to describe it, but
Yeah,
like there's
yeah,
still the idea of like doing heroics and like grinding dungeons to get gear that then puts you into like the raids, but then it's also got like random rep grinds for daily quests that are still like quests you pick up. They're not just like world quests in the area.
yeah,
And there's like shoulder enchants and reasons you want to have different factions. Like I had to look up which faction I needed because like some of the factions give like specific helm enchants,
yeah,
like healers, damage dealers, or tanks. So that's been a lot of fun playing Wrath so far. So, but
yeah.
yeah, now I got to level engineering, so I gotta mine
I haven't
7 million Serenite.
I have not yet even logged into
Really?
Wrath. Yeah. I'm gonna get around to
It's,
it. I'm going to get around to it. It's just like I haven't
it's
had time.
busy. Yeah,
Busy, busy,
yeah, no,
busy.
definitely.
And now we've got Dragonflight launch sneaking up on us, right? Like
It's
the
true.
the leaked pre-patch date is in 2 weeks for reference. The
Yeah.
actual launch date is the one that was leaked.
Hmm.
So you know, relatively likely that the pre-patch date is what was leaked, which would
Yeah.
be well, check
The 25th of October.
25th of October.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's gonna be an adventure.
Yeah, it's closing in very quickly. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, speaking of pre-patch stuff, right now, while we're not in pre-patch, is Blizzard with the October 4th set of resets. So last week's resets, they'd add a 50% experience buff to retail.
Yep.
So called Winds of Wisdom. So you have 50% XP increase from 10 to 59. So basically, if you want to catch up, level anything up to 60, get ready for Dragonflight. Now is sort of the week to do it. This goes away once invokers become playable,
Yep.
which I didn't actually put this in the notes, but there was some random data mining I saw on Twitter that had basically 3 points for the pre-patch. There's like the pre-patch, then an
Mm.
event occurs, then invokers become playable, and then another event occurs, and then we go right into like the launch of the
I
expansion.
wonder.
So
I
I don't
wonder
know
if
if
it's like the allied race unlock kind of things, where like day one pre-patch hits and you have to do a quest line to unlock the allied race, and then you can go and you make your evoker kind of thing.
yeah, it's probably I think the way it read, at least the thread I read was like there's like a story element to the invokers becoming like a part of a faction. And so like you
Yeah.
have to complete that story, which looks to take about 2 weeks, and then you get the or a week or whatever. And then you get the actual invokers playable character like this week.
Yeah.
So it looks like with pre-patch, I don't know if we're getting playable invokers right away or
I hope that
if
they
it'll
do
be
not
another.
time gate it. Like, I would be okay with them doing like day one patch comes out, you have to do a quest line to unlock,
Hmm.
like to have the Dragthier join your faction, and
Right, right,
then
right.
you can go and make one. But if it's like, oh yeah, pre-patch is here, you can't make an evoker yet. Why?
Yeah, like
Why?
wait 2 weeks. Yeah, yeah,
Why? Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's it. So get your stuff leveled. I don't have anything. I think I want to maybe level my druid. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I actually want to like fully play an alt going into like the launch. Basically have a second character because it seemed like a lot of what I've noticed like for the max level content, there's not a ton to do like to grind for those first 2 weeks. So I think there'll probably be plenty of time to get something up, get your sort of best in slot gear before raids launch, and then
Yeah.
do the raid.
I
So
am I'm waiting for the character services sale. I'm waiting for the
yeah.
like right before, like it's gonna be Black Friday weekend basically, right? That the expansion releases. I'm waiting for character services sale so I can transfer my hunter and my warlock and priest off of the old dead realm and onto Area 52.
Nice, nice,
And
nice.
uh
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, so definitely get your stuff leveled if you want to, if you're playing
yeah.
something new.
And like I would level
Um,
things, except that my hunter is like my old main, so I'm not
yeah.
re-leveling that. Otherwise I would just re-level.
Yeah, that's true. Um, cool. All right, and then I guess the other sort of notes that sort of segue us into what we wanted to talk a little bit about today is they did there was raid testing set up this week. So this week
Yep.
there was heroic and the first mythic boss, Terros was uh was testable. So two heroic bosses and one mythic. Um, I did not do testing at all. I don't know, Emerson, if you
I did
did.
all of them.
Oh,
We
okay.
actually
So
were able to
how?
field a mythic group, which was very nice.
Oh, cool.
Um, so I guess starting with the heroic one. So we tested the final two bosses. This is the, or not final in terms of raid position, but final in terms of like we have now tested all 7 bosses that they are going to publicly test.
Mhm.
That means that the end boss, like the jailer, not going to be publicly tested. Um, and they were good, actually. Like I think there's one boss that we've tested so far that has not really been pretty solid, at least considering its position in the raid. Like obviously the first boss, very
Yeah,
simplistic, but it's the first boss. It can be simplistic.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, so there's 2 bosses that we tested, and I'm blanking actually on the primal. It's the Primalist Council, and
Mhm.
then uh, I don't know the name. Sinarth, I think.
Sinarth, the
Yeah,
cold breath.
yeah, it's a giant ice spider.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Um,
Lovely.
and that one has some like implementation issues. But
Gotcha.
it is actually like it is a very interesting fight, I think. But anyway, the council is actually very similar to Prototype Pantheon,
I
except you
heard that. Yeah.
start with all 4 active. So there's 2 that are
Oh.
casters, like on Pantheon, and they don't really
Mhm.
do tank things. The real thing is just like you actually, unlike Pantheon, you're going to be moving around the room a bunch, so you have to keep them interrupted so that they, well, also so they don't kill people, but so that they stay on top of the others so you can get your nice 4 target cleave for the whole fight.
Gotcha.
Um, and then, so basically, the core conceit is that there's a boss. Each of the council members is of a different element: earth, fire, water, lightning.
Okay.
And, or I guess it's ice instead of, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And the different mechanics interact with each other. So if you get targeted by a lightning mechanic, you go to one of the stalagmites that get spawned by the earth guy and you ground yourself so that you don't die to the lightning.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it doesn't literally kill you, but it is the like it's a lightning circle, and if you touch somebody else, it copies to them and they get lightning too. So it gets really out of hand
Gotcha.
really quickly if you don't clear it. You run over to one of these stalagmites and you just clear it. Uh, the fire puddles that come out melt the stalagmite and they remove them. Uh,
Oh.
for the way we were doing it, that is not what we wanted to do. So we just tried to avoid doing that for the most part. But you can.
Mhm.
You can do that if you get one spawned in a bad spot and you need to deal with it. You can remove it by melting it effectively. Uh,
Gotcha.
they leave a fire patch that then the ice boss like is going to do a blizzard, and if you hit 10 stacks, you get frozen in ice, and you can clear it by going and standing in the fire.
Sipping the fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool.
yeah. So like all of the mechanics have interactions with each other, and yeah, it just actually felt pretty good. It worked fairly well. The most annoying thing was like people opening up on one of the caster bosses and dragging it off to the ranged pile and having to try and get it back from them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
really annoying. But um we also didn't have any real hunters to misdirect us. Only the beast
Gotcha.
mastery kind where their misdirect is like really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awful. Yeah.
So that was like that's not going to be a problem when it's actually live. We'll just be like, yeah, everybody starts on, this boss and then
Right.
we get thread on that. And then you can start leaving.
Gotcha. Oh,
But
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And then Sinarth. Um okay. So, this is a hard one to describe. Let me explain it like this. You know the intermission on Halondrus?
Yes, where it like walks around and yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
the whole fight, almost.
It's just constant movement from like one area to the next, like
Pretty much.
and dodging like a big like is this
No, no,
itself
no.
like a
So it's
knockback or
just
just
the
like
movement. It's just the movement. There's no
okay, just
knockback.
movement. Okay,
Um, and there are ads that spawn, so that's a big difference from Halondrus, right? There are
hmm
ads that spawn, and there are two main mechanics going on. One is ice puddles, which do like old Super Mario era ice physics.
Oh, I heard about this boss. People were really excited about this.
Okay,
Apparently, Roll had an interesting interaction with them.
yeah. Uh, I found it unpleasant because you would you can't just like turn and roll somewhere because it keeps your momentum, and you if you try and flip directions and roll, it
Yeah,
doesn't do the full roll. You're doing a mini roll. Like you need to like turn
gotcha.
around and run against your momentum and start moving the other way, and then you can roll.
Okay.
Um, but so there's that. And those get spawned both randomly by the boss and by a frontal from one of the big ads that spawns, or I guess the big ad that spawns.
Gotcha.
And so you generally just like try and keep those not in the direction you're going because they do actually make it hard.
Yeah.
And then there is webbing. The boss will put a debuff on some people and they drop spider webs under their feet. And if you get 5 stacks from standing in them, then you get wrapped in web. Unlike
Oh,
the other
really?
ice block effects, these can't be killed by people.
Oh,
You
interesting.
you break them. There's some corrosive spiders, that spiderlings that spawn, and you
hmm
have to kill them on top of people that are wrapped in web in order to clear it.
Gotcha.
But they also clear the webbing on the ground, and you might think, oh, that's great, it clears the webbing on the ground. The boss does like a you remember on the eye the like chain from the
Yeah.
ad? It does like that to the whole raid. The ice makes it
Okay.
harder to like control your momentum to actually run away from that.
Right.
But if you get dragged through webbing, it stops you.
So you kind of want the webbing for
Kind of
like
want the webbing around.
for a little bit, yeah, for a little bit of
Yeah.
help movement wise.
So
Okay.
it's like you want to like mostly keep the spiderlings away from the webbing, but then
Yeah.
have some around to be able to go and kill, um, any people that get webbed. So you can break them out and continue the fight.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And then when you get to the top of so you're basically going up a big spiral staircase, and when you get to the
Uh-huh.
top, the boss actually lands on the platform, and you basically are trying to kill them before they kill you. There's a ramping like blizzard going on. There is fraud, like you can't leave the platform that you're on. You can't go
Gotcha.
down the stairs because there's ice down there. It will
Oh,
kill you,
interesting.
and it has the ice physics everywhere, which was very unpleasant. I
You
like
really didn't like these ice fixes.
I'm okay with the ice physics in the like first phase where it's just like if you're in an ice patch you have the ice physics. Like all right,
Right, right, right.
I can make a point not to stand in the ice. I think that's fine. Like
Right, right, right.
that's perfectly fine with me. It's just like the ice physics everywhere in the final phase was not like I did not have a good time with that. I was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
enjoying it. Yeah.
Oh man.
And the Mythic Terros. So I talked about Terros last week, so there's not really a lot more to say other than that. The Mythic
Yeah.
mechanic is not nearly as big of a deal as I expected it to be.
Okay. That's good.
Um, so basically, what it is everybody in the raid, like when Rebel falls, everybody in the raid gets dust on them, and when the dust is a dot, so you want to clear it eventually.
Yeah.
So you clear it by running into somebody else. When you run into them, it damages the two of you, nobody else. So there's no need to manage like how many people clear at the same time or anything like that. You just clear it.
Okay.
And it spawns a stalagmite under you temporarily. It like pops up and then pops back down. And you want to avoid that, and you can't avoid that. It spawns after like a second. You want to avoid that
Okay.
because it does like 50% of your health when you get hit.
Okay.
Um, but what we were doing which is very entertaining strat, is having the entire ranged group just like pixel stack and the entire melee group pixel stack and then the tanks stacked. And they would all
Okay.
clear it once and then move out of the
Oh,
thing
interesting.
and just remove
And
it.
like there was, and it wasn't
I mean,
like deadly at all.
yeah, it wasn't like scaling with the number of people that you were on top of when you would pick one person and clear off of them.
Gotcha. So you only
These
basically took the
spikes,
damage once, too.
yeah, the spikes would be deadly though. Like you would 100% die to those spikes
Gotcha. So you basically had to, you could clear everybody at once and then then
and
basically
get
spread
out.
out.
And if you were slow to get out, it would be like on Painsmith where you do that final set of puddles to
Uh
spawn
huh.
the ads. If you don't get out of those in time, you just die. There's no
Yeah.
coming back
Yeah.
from it. Yeah, it would be like that.
Interesting. Interesting. Interesting.
But other than that, it's just the heroic fight with bigger numbers.
Yeah.
And I think the heroic fight is good. So I actually like Mythic Terros was pretty fun. I liked it.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately for me, like if I have an actual real job, so well, not that you don't have a real job. That's rude. But I have a job that does not allow me to
Yeah, I
play.
was working on Sartharian 3D all of Friday. Supposed to have Friday's supposed to be a half day for me, and I was working on it up until raid testing started.
Oh, jeez. Jeez. Did you get it to work?
Mostly.
Oh, fair enough.
To be clear, rankings for Sartharian worked. It was just that it was displaying people with 20 200 million. Yes,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
because of hard mode stuff, implementation details leaking out, where we like
Gotcha.
basically add DPS to people that do it on a harder difficulty so that they rank higher.
Oh, okay. Okay. Look at you. Look at you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. I mean, that's fun fact. That's how Keystone ranks work.
Fair enough.
I literally just copied what we do for Keystones.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But yeah, I did not catch every place that it needed to be patched to show the correct number.
Interesting.
Still
Fair
one that I got
enough.
notified of this morning. So I gotta fix that tomorrow.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Well, cool. I'm glad raid testing went. At least I mean, I think as always, I haven't heard, to be fair, like you said, like no bosses really seem that bad. And this is a shorter raid anyway. So
Yeah,
I mean, they only have the 8 basically to get through for
yeah.
tier 1, which is
Brood
nice. So
Broodmother Diurna is the only one that really is suspect right now. I think that one
gotcha.
needs some work. The spider boss has some implementation things that they need to fix. Like,
Uh-huh.
it's actually super easy for a tank to accidentally move out of range, and then when you do that, boss will hit whoever it can, which might be your other
Uh-huh.
tank, and refresh their stacks, which is super bad. Or it
Yeah.
might be a pet, which we actually had somebody's wind, whatever. What are the snake bird things? You know what I'm talking about. They're all over for
Yes. Yes.
Alice.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wind serpents.
Wind
Yeah.
serpents. Yeah, literally bird snake thing. Okay, got it. Wind serpents. We had some of these wind serpent that every time both the tanks moved out of range,
Yeah.
temporarily, which happens because you like as you're moving up the platforms, you're moving, you're trying to not run through all of the webbing so that you don't get frozen. You're trying to not. I mean, there's literally obstacles, not like hard obstacles, it's like a some stalagmites on the edge of the platform that you have to run around. And if both tanks
Right.
do that at the same time, then the boss can't hit you. And so it would turn and hit a wind serpent. And fun fact, it doesn't kill it.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, if you ran zero melee, you could conceivably have a wind serpent tank this boss.
Nice. Nice.
Until phase 2, in which case you would all die. But phase 1.
Phase 1, you could do it. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Good to know. Good to know.
That'll get fixed.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, let's hope so. Oh man. Well, cool. Well, I guess we could move a little bit into some of the, I guess, the changes on beta. So this sort of main topic today, like we talked about, we'll talk a little bit about some of the various ability changes in beta this week, some interesting ones. Not even just for Monk, but one interesting one out there. And then probably dive into Mythic Plus and a lot of the updates they have there, because Mythic Plus is testable on beta right now. Which is fun. So Yeah, I mean, I think outside so I'll go over the monk stuff maybe second. The first just big thing I wanted to touch on outside of this is that, Blizzard removed Restless Crew from Outlaw Rogues,
I
which
love
is
I love the patch history of this. Okay, so there's four patch notes about Restless Crew. There's the first one where it is like announced as part of the talent tree, right? With
Yep,
the spell description and everything. And then the second one is a note, and it's like we have heard your concerns about Restless Crew effectively. The
yeah,
third one is Restless Crew has been implemented. So that was like the first one where it was like actually in the game and playable. And the
yep,
fourth one is this one, and it is Restless Crew has been removed.
which is the implemented to removed was within, I think, the same build, wasn't it? Like, they
It went. It was like one build to the next build. It got implemented
yeah,
and then deleted. It's
yeah.
so funny.
So I mean, for people who aren't aware, Restless Crew was the outlaw rogue ability that, as you spent combo points, you reduced the offensive cooldowns of, I think it was party members, or it was just members of your party. I think
Yeah,
was the way that it read. So
yeah,
like, there was a bunch of issues. There were a bunch of just questions around like, do you need an outlaw rogue for every group now, and like, what cooldowns are they going to reduce because it's not every offensive cooldown every other class has, and yeah, and the
yeah,
fact that CDR now, I mean, because it was based on not a flat CDR, it was based on like combo points spent. RNG of like combo points being spent by the Outlaw Rogue would then influence when your cooldowns are up. And then if they're up earlier,
yeah,
does it offset things? There was a bunch of, I
yeah,
think, people just a little bit concerned about this one, but
yeah.
it's
And
it's removed now.
like,
So
unlike Wind Fury Totem, this
yeah,
Restless Crew thing was good for all DPS. So there's really the only limit on how many Outlaw Rogues you'd want to run is how many people actually had relevant cooldowns. Some classes
right.
don't really care or already have heavy cooldown reductions, so they don't need the extra. Some classes game would stand to gain a lot from it. And so like Wind Fury Totem, you really only need one because that's how many melee you're gonna run. You don't really have enough melee to run two Wind Fury groups. But this, like, why stop at two?
Yeah, it's true. Have one for every group that has DPS in it, right?
Yeah,
But
screw the
yeah, so
tanks.
it's yeah, who cares? Sad to see Outlaw losing this sort of, I guess, utility or raid buff, but probably for the best in general for the game. Um, so yeah, so that was sort of the Outlaw Rogue stuff. And then in terms of monks, monk are they finally changed our close to heart talent. So this was the one that originally gave 2 or 4% leech to allies within 10 yards of you. They changed this to just being a flat increase in healing taken. So instead of being leech, it's 4% increased healing taken and 8% increased healing taken. Comparable and probably just as good in the grand scheme of things. In terms of like, your healing taken from everyone is now increased, which is great. So utility wise, still solid.
It
Um,
so an interesting thing here is the value of that relative to leech is going to depend a lot on how much like what the relative balance of damage taken and damage done is. Like in
yeah.
Legion, it was skewed one way where DPS outdid HPS effectively. You did
Hmm.
bigger damage numbers than healing numbers. Leech was better, and the healing received increase. But in BFA and beyond, it's mostly been the other way around, where healing numbers are often substantially bigger than DPS numbers. Like right now, a good healer that's getting to like have preferential cooldown placements and everything can do double or triple what a DPS can do in terms of like the
Right.
raw number. Obviously, DPS are not trying to heal, but so like that HPS increase or that healing increase is like actually potentially a lot better than leech.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, the 4 and 8%, we'll see what it actually looks like what it does numbers wise, but it is a very I'd say it's a decent change, right? Or decent swap, right? From leech to healing increases, which is good. The avoidance one is still broken, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Um, so it's still trying to increase your avoidance rating by 2 and 4%, not giving you 2 and 4% rating.
Yeah,
So or 2 and 4% avoidance. So hopefully they'll fix that. That one though is still remains unchanged.
yeah.
And the other thing too is there was a couple of tuning things to Mistweavers this week. They did so a couple things happened. They increased the healing from ancient teachings, which is the after you use Essence Font or Feline Stomp, your damage abilities do healing based on the amount of damage done to an injured ally. And so they upped it from 125% to 150% of the damage done.
Okay.
So an increase there, which is nice. They did reduce the spell power of or sorry, they increased, sorry, the spell power coefficient of Enveloping Mist. Enveloping Mist will now heal for more over the course of its hot, which is awesome. So from 288 to 324% spell power, which is great. And then finally they changed Overflowing Mist, which is actually probably a good change. So they reduced it. So overflowing mist used to be every time when your enveloping mist heals a target, it would heal them for 1.5% or 3%, depending on the number of points you put in, of their maximum health for each time they take damage. So like every white hit or spell hit a player would take, they'd be healed for just a flat 1.5% or 3%. So they lowered
Yeah.
that to 1 and 2%, which is good. They also made it so it can't crit anymore, which is probably the a better change than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a 3% heal, 3% HP heal on a tank that then crits is essentially like it was something like probably 20 or 30, percent of their overall health, which is just crazy, right? Or sorry, 20, 30 thousand, which is just a general great heal for no
Yeah.
effort at all.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so some Mistweaver updates there, a little
Y'all
bit of
also
tuning.
got some damage buffs.
We did get some damage buffs and an interesting mana increase, which I don't
Yeah.
know how much that actually affects us. But yeah, so we did get some damage increases to Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, and Blackout Kick. All had their damage increased by 25% for Rising Sun Kick, 40% for Tiger Palm, and 20% for Blackout Kick. Or sorry, increase for Rising Sun Kick and Tiger Palm, but Blackout Kick was reduced damage. My fault. It actually reduced the damage of Blackout Kick, which, to be fair, with some of the way that our talents were running, Blackout Kick was doing a ridiculous amount of damage because you could get up to 12 hits each time you hit Blackout Kick on 12 different mobs. So they reduced the amount of damage by 20% for Blackout Kick. So in general, a DPS increase for us. The mana cost increase on Rising Sun Kick is interesting. We'll have to see how that plays out. But basically, I mean, to be fair, Rising Sun Kick does do a lot when you talent into like Rising Mist and with oh shoot, I don't remember all the talent names, but there's the talent that adds a enveloping mist every time you Rising Sun Kick, I believe.
Yeah.
So with those also, and the Rising Sun Kick is a pretty much an ability you want to hit all the time, and it is very, very powerful. Um, so yeah, some tuning changes for Monk, all good, or at least Mistweaver, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All good. Not really, I'd say not really nerfs or well, definitely probably more on the buff side in general. Um, for
On
Mistweaver at least.
on the Windwalker side, very few changes. Main things are actually just bug fixes. There's a couple in the notes. Empowered Tiger Lightning and Mark of the Crane passives now work. That's a lot of it. And then fixing something with one of their Touch of Death talents. And then my favorite kind of patch note, the completely inscrutable Strike of the Windlord. Damage has been adjusted. Up, down, sideways, who knows? It's been adjusted though.
I read the tooltip too. It's so confusing because like the original tooltip just had like the same number added together, and that was the damage. So the new one is like different numbers added together. I have no idea.
Did they change the damage calculation, but it's like net neutral? Who the hell knows?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's
Babs
very
Babs
confusing.
probably knows. We could like bully Babs into like making a 5-minute podcast appearance to talk about Windwalker changes, but not
We
going to.
could.
So Brewmaster also got some fixes. They are not in the patch notes. That has been actually a fairly consistent thing. That there have been Brewmaster changes that are not in the patch notes. We have a handy dandy spreadsheet that is maintained by Kate in the Discord that has all of current Brewmaster bugs that we know about, including stuff that is in the class tree like Generous Pour, that currently giving avoidance rating instead of avoidance. We did have 3 that were fixed in this build though. We had Chi Surge is no longer broken as hell. It was applying the dot on basically everything, which obviously is insanely good. Like in dungeons, it was like 70% of people obviously busted. Counter Strike was actually not working correctly with Spinning Crane Kick. That has been fixed. There is now a new bug, Counter Strike and Spinning Crane Kick. If you get a proc while you're currently spinning, then the proc gets consumed at the end of the channel, and you don't get the buff from it.
That's
So
very similar to the free Vivify talent.
yeah,
If you're in the middle of casting
it gets
Vivify,
consumed when it.
as it
Yeah,
as a proxy, it'll consume it at the end. Yeah.
yeah.
So
And then high tolerance was giving too much haste. It is now giving the amount of haste that it says on the tooltip. So
nice. Nice. Well, cool. Well, yeah. So tons of, I think, tons of tuning and bug fixes basically from Blizzard here on out for us.
yep.
With probably minimal, design or talent updates in terms of what they do. For other class. I think Monk's probably pretty set. At least I don't know about Brewmaster, but Mistweaver seems
Also,
pretty set.
there's one more important Brewmaster change. I had speculated last
Oh.
week that they might be removing rank 2 of Invoke Niazao. The
Hmm.
damage taken from, or damage purified, turning into damage dealt. That got a new name this build. It is now improved Invoke Niazao the Black Ox. So, my wild conspiracy
Nice.
theory about no translation, meaning the ability was on the chopping block, has
Right.
been disproven. I am very sad.
I got rank 2 now. It's back. You know.
Yeah,
It's back.
it's
Um.
back.
Well, cool. Um, well, cool. Well, then the other big thing this week on beta was Mythic Plus is live. So Mythic Plus is live until tomorrow afternoon, basically, or evening. So the end of the day tomorrow, Pacific time. And there are 2 dungeons available to do Mythic Plus in. It's Ruby Life Pools and the Azure Vault. And along with the new seasonal affix Thundering is also available to mess around with. Have you done any Mythic Plus,
I have
Emerson?
not, but I've seen clips of the new Affix.
I did one dungeon.
Okay.
Did not complete it. Um,
Ooh.
because the group just sort of disbanded after we got to like the first boss in Ruby Life Pools, and it was not going well. And people were like, "Yeah, I just don't want to deal with this anymore." Because Thundering is a mess. Like it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
unfun.
Yeah.
It's like if Quaking like
Quaking
drank a
and
bunch of like
Prideful like had a baby. That's thundering.
yeah. Well, yeah, that baby then like drank a bunch of like the ooze that made the Ninja Turtles and like morphed it into like Super Shredder, and like that is what you had to fight. Yeah, it's so it starts out that gets a circle around you, but then there's also like zones that pop up or lightning strikes. You have to like dodge that, and then at the end of it, then like you spew out like 4 balls away from you. So there's like
And it's not
movement
one person doing it like Prideful, mind you. It is all 5 people in the party.
the entire group, and like so there's like the zone denial from the original lightning strikes, and then you have to basically either spread or find a good position where like when you explode and shoot your 4 things out, you don't have like 4 of them hitting in the same area. It's a mess. I mean, I think I saw some clips too. It didn't happen to us, but there was clips of it like triggering as the countdown occurs for the dungeon. So you're in that small little front room, and then you
Yeah.
have thundering going off, like, and you sort of wipe before the dungeon even starts. So it's just not. And there's no. I guess the other part of it too is there's no buff for doing it well,
Yeah.
right? Like with Prideful, after you killed the mob, you got a buff. Or like with a lot of the seasonal affixes, there is a like buff component to them, and I think they've always had that, right? Like I can't remember of a seasonal affix where they didn't have
All
a
right.
buff component.
So the Gahoon one did not have a buff.
Oh, infested. You're right. Yes.
And then technically the
Yeah.
Queen of Jar one did have a buff, but it was ass. In fact, the whole Affix was garbage. And
Gotcha.
then they took the bad parts of it and they made Inspired, and then now Inspired is dead and gone, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I mean it's just unfun, and like I think I didn't do high key levels. I think we were doing like low ones. So like getting hit by some of the lightning strikes wasn't potentially too dangerous. Um but at higher key levels you can also imagine you get hit by one of the initial lightning strikes that sort of
And you
spawn, and they
just
spawn
die.
randomly around. You're just
Yeah.
dead,
Yeah.
right? There's like no like the counterplay is just dodging everything really easily, but again, if you're in a small, not all these dungeons are super spread out. So like if you're in a small hallway like part of the dungeon and this triggers, you are left
Yeah.
with like 2 spots you can stand, and then
And
now you're all on top of
yeah,
each other and
I
about to
think
explode.
that's a really important distinction from how Prideful was managed. So for one thing, like everybody gets the orbs instead of just the one person, right? So it's closer
Mhm.
maybe to Prototype Pantheon's big room. Um and more like the so you can't control it effectively is what I was trying to get at before I lost my train.
Yeah.
You can't control it. Like Prideful, you could control to a large degree where you spawned Prideful, so you could make sure that you had space be able for somebody to go off a little bit and um not bomb the group with the orbs. Like you
Right.
had control over that. With this thing basically being super quaking, it goes off
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, it can
You
spawn in a small hallway that you might have intentionally not spawned prideful in. Like maybe you would have intentionally worked your route to not have prideful mobs spawn in the middle of a tiny hallway where you have no space to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
um so
That
I
and, like, can you imagine this affix with quaking, though? Like, the
it's gonna be awful. All
like, if
right,
they spawn at this.
like playing mage is giving me a new appreciation for how ass quaking is on a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For
it's
healers in general, when it used to do damage as a healer, particularly, like,
oh yeah, that
on
was
monk,
even
like,
worse.
if you weren't set up for it, like, people just died and there was literally nothing you could do because, like, you wouldn't get the heal off and, yeah, it was bad. But, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah,
It's rough.
yeah. So I am okay with them not putting a big like damage bonus or whatever on the affixes. I think one of the lessons from Shadowlands keys has been how those big buffs can kind of warp things and obscure actual problems. Like
Mhm.
Prideful being such a huge damage buff that it let you do bosses that were just too hard, too overtuned. Um, but
Right.
it obscured the fact that you couldn't do those without Prideful, and therefore, if you ripped your Prideful, you were just done. The queue was over.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Um, so I'm okay with them not, including a big damage buff in it. But this is not saying it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely they're trying something new, it's interesting, like, I think being able to play it with more of the dungeons and, like I mean, the space thing I think is pretty apparent, but also the overlap with other affixes that are out there is gonna be also potentially just annoying in general, like, Sanguine in this is just, like, you might have to stand in Sanguine to actually dodge, like, the lightning, so it's a little they're getting a little bit of, like, space denial overload, I think, in terms of, like, leveraging this
Yeah,
thundering affix, so
yeah. This is
we'll
literally
see.
three different space denial affixes stapled together.
Yeah, yeah. So that's Thundering. Along with Thundering, they did also put out a post about Mythic Plus and like the reward structure of it. And they're adding basically 5 key levels to the rewards. Um, so basically, Blizzard put out a post and said, we will now. They're doing a couple things. They're increasing the rewards up to the plus 20. So up to plus 20 will reward increased item level. No longer plus 15. So to get max eye level from your box, you do complete a plus 20 each week. They're also increasing the damage and health gain, starting with Keystone 11 from 8% per key level to 10% per key level, which means, a current plus 15 in Dragonflight will probably feel more like a 17. And then
Yeah,
a current plus 20 will probably feel more like a 23, if like napkin math,
yeah,
sort of idea. Um, so yeah, so they're increasing just the overall difficulty past Keystone 11. Which again, I get it. And it seems like all of this. Oh, then sorry. Also, along with this increase to 20, they are increasing how high you can upgrade these items, adding 2 new upgrade tiers. I believe it's 2 new upgrade tiers that take you to essentially being able to upgrade an item from Mythic Plus to 415, which is a mid-tier Mythic item from the raid.
yeah. So for clarity, because things have been data mined and then changed, and then data mined and then changed. The current structure is um, there's 8 bosses. The first 4 bosses drop 1 tier of items. Bosses 5
Mhm.
and 6, so the end wing bosses in each wing drop a higher eye level, and the two final bosses drop even higher eye level. So 415 is mythic item level for the first four. 421 is the mythic eye level for the wing end bosses, and then 424 is the like actual like end boss item level. So what this means is you'll be able to use, if you have 2400 IO, you'll be able to upgrade your gear, like end of dungeon gear, to mythic item level. For reference, currently you can only upgrade it to mythic item level -6. You can go up to 298, and mythic eye level is 304. So that's a big change. And then the end of the like mythic plus, or I guess the great vault. The great vault is going to drop mid tier mythic loot, so 421, if you complete a
Mhm.
20.
All right. Sorry, I got the numbers wrong on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something. It's certainly something. There is a note about this that the end of dungeon loot. So once you hit, in order to hit heroic item level, yeah, in order to hit heroic item level, you have to complete a plus 17. From like the end of dungeon box with no valor spent on it. You complete a plus 17, you get 402. That's entry level heroic. You can go up to 405, which is the mid tier, like end wing boss heroic. Um, which, like again, reiterate, you currently like your end of dungeon box is always heroic -3 item levels right now, and that is still what it is. I mean, technically, it's -4.
Mhm.
Nobody's gonna miss that one eye level. There's a bunch of people that are real mad about this on Reddit because they can't do math and
Right.
or are
Yeah.
dealing with outdated item level information. Um, but this is basically pure upside. Like you can get your just slightly below heroic gear from plus 15s, like you currently can. They will be
Right.
tuned slightly harder, so they won't be a complete joke like they currently are. And then if you push higher, like you're doing 20s, then you get actual like heroic end boss, or not end boss, mid boss eye level.
Yeah. Which is which is good. I mean, like we talked a little bit about this before the podcast, but like I think in general, some people are a little bit upset about this, but uh, like to me, like this is Blizzard trying to make it so that like as a Mythic Plus player, you have the ability to get gear just from doing Mythic Plus that is like equivalent to rating. And I think there will, when I say that, there will always be outlier items, like particularly trinkets and weapons that,
Yeah,
you are just going to be better
yeah,
from one or the other content. I mean, like we see that Mythic Plus generally has better trinkets than raids for almost everyone, right?
yeah,
Um, and so I think you'll always see that with individual items. But in general, if we talk about like armor pieces or just, rings and things like that, this gives you the ability to focus on Mythic Plus and be competitive with someone who also raids, right?
yeah.
Which
And
I think is a good thing.
yeah, and this is
Like,
like currently one of the issues is that you have these like end boss weapons that there are 7 eye levels over the non-end boss weapons, what you can get from any other source in the game. With the new structure, they are going to be 3 item levels above the other stuff, which is still higher. Like you still cannot get anything on that level, but 3 is smaller than 7. It's closer. You can get closer without getting your Zovastrum or whatever from the jailer on Mythic.
right.
Um, and that is good. It means that you can pick up like a weapon from a key in the vault at eye level, 421. And no, it's not 424, but it's a lot closer than what you could have got. So this is an improvement. The one like actual downside, I think, for a lot of people is just the scaling increase.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and the scaling increase in terms, like to me, that issue really is for the folks who do 15s, like 1 or 4 15s just to supplement loot from like and their main thing that they do is raid, right? Like to
Yeah.
me, the increase in difficulty hurts someone like myself, I think. Personally, it hurts me because I only do 15s at the start of a season to get the achievement number 1, right? But number 2 is really to supplement gear from the vault each
Yeah.
week, right? For those first like 3 4 weeks where I'm trying to get as much item level just as I can, get it from wherever I want, right? It'll make that part of the grind more difficult for someone like me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think to me, I don't know. I like this change, but I like this change from the point of view of like giving people who only want to focus on Mythic Plus access to higher item level gear that's equivalent to raids, and then also something additional to strive for. Because today, plus 15, like in my mind, I agree with maybe what Blizzard's direction here is that a plus 20 isn't something you pug. At least not at the start of a season. Like to me, a plus 20 is something you go in with at least some sort of a coordinated group and it is difficult to complete.
Yeah. And I
Right.
think so. One note on that, this is where things like the concept of pugging gets really wishy washy because technically lots of the highest keys are done in pugs. They're
Yeah, that's
not
true.
like a guild group, but they are very far from like a dungeon, like an LFD group, right? You're not just taking 5 randos. You're doing a lot more of looking at what keys a person has done. Maybe somebody you know has experience with them. It's a lot more of taking people you know and have run with, and it maybe not be the like same 5 people, but
Right.
it's not really a pug in the same way. As we do get deeper into season, you do see a lot more of pugging like 20s, and right now like 25s, just because of scaling being. Um,
Right.
but that's not something that happens like day one typically.
Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, to me, this is it's a cool experiment. We'll see how it goes in Dragonflight. I mean, a lot of people are slightly upset that like you have to push a little bit higher to get something, but like to me, like I don't know. To be fair, I've done like 1 plus 20 ever. Like so, it's not. I don't
Yeah,
particularly do difficult Mythic Plus stuff. And the plus 20 was like stressful. It was stressful in the same way of like doing a Mythic Plus boss was as a healer. Um, to me, Mythic Plus is just generally more stressful because you're the only healer.
yeah.
Um,
So
and
when you roll off
but
the edge, there's no one to cover your ass.
exactly. And like wiping a key run isn't like wiping a bot. Like if I roll off
Yeah,
the edge on, say, like Nerzul, it's like a 3 or 4 minute
yeah,
issue. While it is for 19 other people, it's not like we just spent 20 minutes in this dungeon and you
yeah,
roll off and now the key is done,
yeah,
right? Which I think is to me like that's probably where the difficulty in Mythic Plus comes from is that it's an always on like you basically it's like doing a 25, 30, some cases 40-minute boss fight, right? Like but constant.
yeah,
There's not like an ebb and flow. There's not like trash in the middle. Like even trash is dangerous. And if you're really trying to push fast, you do trash. It's just like other bosses. Technically, trash is sometimes harder than bosses, right? And
often
so,
I would
I mean,
say.
yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting way to do it. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about I had some crazy ideas about Mythic Plus and what these changes potentially do to it. In that, in my mind, this is Blizzard trying to take steps to make a third pillar in the game, where you have PvP, you have rating, which is like large scale PvE content, and then you have Mythic Plus, which is small scale PvE content.
Right.
Um, I think today Mythic Plus is somewhat treated as like a side activity. It's like other raid teams raiders do if they want to or raiders do when they can't raid,
Yeah,
but it's not like I'm a Mythic Plus player because if you're a Mythic Plus player you're like you're still probably raiding if you're
yeah.
really trying to push that
And I
high.
mean, a
So
lot of that is down to loot. Like you, in order to get the highest
yeah.
eye level stuff, you have to raid like CE. You have to kill the last few bosses. Um, this is going to close the gap by enough that uh, you still probably need to raid for the unique items.
Right, and it
But
just depends on the power of those unique items.
yeah, it's going to depend a lot on those. Like maybe you can get away with only being like, okay, I'm going to kill the first 4, and I'm not gonna, you know, not gonna worry about anything after that. And that's easier for people to do. I mean,
Yeah,
almost by definition, easier for people to do.
right. Yeah, so you maybe chase the unique items a little bit less because they're not far and away that much better than maybe a trinket that you could get at 415, right? Or
Yeah,
potentially 421 for your
yeah,
box, right? So yeah, I mean there's that. And then yeah, I mean I think to be honest with you, hopefully Blizzard in my mind, Blizzard really needs to take the next step with Mythic Plus. And like if they want it to be equal eye level, they have to sort of start to parallel how loot comes from Mythic Plus. And we talked this is this is now sort of in
yeah.
a
We're now in
noms.
in Anam's La La Land.
Yeah, in a Nom's sort of mad scientist laboratory, and we were talking about this before the podcast, but I'd like to bring it up here is that see the way that I think that Mythic Plus, so the eye level increase, awesome, more difficult keys, awesome. And I think what they need to really make Mythic Plus its own thing, potentially, in my mind, is to limit the item pool and basically treat dungeons like boss fights from raids, meaning like a dungeon drops either like a set number of items, which is smaller than it does today, or you have just a set number of items that are spread across dungeons, and you can basically run any dungeon you want to get, to always get maybe an item you're thinking of, right? That you want. So rather than having like, I don't know, Changeling only drop from mists, you could have Changeling drop from like three different dungeons, right? And that way you could pick and choose the one you want to do.
I mean, to me,
Um,
that just seems like the opposite of how bosses work.
it's taking the concept of like, well, they're coupled with this whole idea is also limiting the number of items. So instead of having like a ring of any stack combination, well, I think we said rings are a bad example, but like having
Yeah,
boots or an armor piece of any stack combination available in Mythic
yeah,
Plus, you have three sets of boots or like
yeah,
two sets, and like you don't get
yeah.
the specific things. And that way, you know, it would be similar to rating in terms of like a limited loot pool. You only have a couple items you could pick from or get, right?
But at
But
the same time,
the
like, if I am looking for particular boots from Raid, um,
Mhm.
I can like obviously in Mythic it's a little bit different because comp is not typically dictated by loot. Um,
Right,
but then like I can go and do that just that boss on heroic
right.
and on normal and on LFR. What, however far down the pole I have to go in order to get boots that are relevant to me, I can go and I can do that one. I don't have to do any of the other ones. Um, with a dungeon, like I don't know, like just running keys and then, it even though it would be smaller per dungeon, it would be larger at the end of any individual dungeon run, unless you really really cut down on the number of items.
Right. Which I think in my mind, they almost like that's how you make Mythic Plus a like viable alternative to rating is that you have a theoretical best in slot that isn't from a pool of 500 items or whatever it is today. Like I don't know
Yeah,
how many items there are across all the dungeons. And
yeah,
then you still have the same idea of Mythic, like of you can of course in a raid run a boss multiple times on different difficulty, but to be fair, like in some cases you'd never want to run a like LFR dungeon or LFR boss
right,
because item level wise it doesn't make sense.
yeah,
And so similarly, like with Mythic Plus, maybe you don't like the I guess the issue with Mythic Plus is you could just spam plus twos
yeah,
and then just use a bunch of Valor to upgrade,
right.
right?
Those plus twos
Which
that
is
also like give you the chance to get the item, gives you valor. I think that's actually something like,
you're gonna talk about my wild idea.
no, I was gonna talk about twos giving as much valor as 20s.
Yeah.
And I understand like having low keys being relatively efficient for getting valor, because what that provides a reason for people to go, like over geared people to go and do lower keys. The specific issue that I have with it is that it's plus twos.
Yeah.
So like plus twos is super easy to get a group. You can like fresh 60, go get your keystone from the dude, list your keystone if it's one of the easy ones, hopefully. But even then, like as long as it's not a really bad one, like just list your keystone, you'll find people because
Right.
you got people that are eye level 300 looking for valor.
Yeah, no, and I which is just to me is like there's not a raid analogy to that, which just makes Mythic Plus, I think, inherently different in the way like you acquire a
Yeah,
loot. Is that like there's not the ability to just like run like as a Mythic Raider, I have zero incentive to run LFR or normal
yeah,
after I get the item at heroic item level
yeah,
like that I need.
yeah,
And so like in Mythic Plus, there is a reason you might do a plus two to just grind a bunch of valor, and I know they cap it week to week, but like there's no cap. Like I think what about this? Okay. So what about I'm just throwing this out there, but what if you could only upgrade an item like 4 times? So you would have to get it at a like basically to upgrade to max item level, you'd have to get it at like upgrade level 9, which is like getting it at a plus 15 level to make it the max item level.
That just feels arbitrary.
Well, I mean the number's arbitrary, but the idea of like
Well, no,
limiting
like
the number of upgrades you could push into an item in Mythic Plus from a
feels
Valor
arbitrary.
perspective.
I mean
Well,
that to me
no,
feels arbitrary. Like
just the whole concept.
just the whole concept of like saying you can only upgrade this 4 times, but you know that by doing a higher key, you are upgrading it. It's just like there's an equivalency between like key levels and valor levels, effectively, where you can either put more valor in, or you can do a harder key and have the valor basically given to you for free as part of getting the item at a higher level. So like the um
That's fair.
putting the cap on it basically is like removes that. It makes it so that they're not the same thing anymore.
Well, it forces the player, it forces as an individual, if you want the highest item level gear, to do more
Yeah,
difficult content
yeah,
versus just failing, like not failing, but versus just doing easy stuff for longer.
yeah,
Because like there's like in a raid, you can't just do heroic for longer and
yeah,
eventually get mythic stuff,
yeah.
right? So like again, like the idea of progress, like I kind of want like my idea here is that progression wise, you'd want something similar to the way raid progression works, but
Yeah.
tailored or sort of built into the Mythic Plus system. And that way you give the Mythic people who just want to do Mythic Plus a like pathway to be here's how I know I'm the strongest,
Yeah.
right? In terms of like my gear. And like it's not a time thing. I can't just, sit in
So
dungeons for 8 hours a
so
day.
the thing here is that they're kind of accomplishing that by way of valor caps, which I know people don't really like valor caps in general, but basically what that says is you only get to upgrade over the course of like 8 weeks. You get enough valor to perform like 8 upgrades, not full
Yeah.
upgrades from like 0 to whatever. Like upgrade levels go from upgrade level 11 to 12. You get like enough for one of those. And like there's
Right.
various variations where like rings cost like 50, but boots or chest costs like 700 or 800, and a weapon costs like 1200 if you're using a two-hander. So there's like some
Uh-huh.
variability there in terms of like power budget and things. Um, but it basically says you you only get a certain number of mythic eye level pieces from valor upgrades. Like you get
It's true.
up to if it takes you, like if you're doing 20s and you have to upgrade them once, then you can get 8. But if you're doing 15s and you have to upgrade them 4 times, you get 2. And if you're doing 10s and you need to upgrade them 8 times, you get 1.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, they event like I feel like Valor cap has never really been an issue when you look at the long-term season, right? Because like seasons don't last 8 weeks, like seasons last 12,
I mean,
15, and
that's
like
that's part of the issue, is that the seasons
yeah,
last 8 months, not 8 weeks, right?
yeah, exactly. So it's just like Valor, like the Valor cap is like to me, I agree with it early. Like it's an artificial cap early on to upgrading things,
Yeah,
and like not what you're describing, which is like a solution to limit the number of upgrades. So like however you do it, I mean, like either way, I think it makes sense. Like that sort of gating makes sense in terms of like what I'm thinking of, which is just a how do you force not force, but how do you push players who want to get the best items to do more
yeah,
difficult content in
yeah.
Mythic Plus, right?
And I think like
Um,
Schlim in chat is saying, like, I think a large part of this in Raid versus Mythic Plus is just blocking weapons and trinkets. There's similar power level to Raid, um, behind some rating threshold. Like you must, get your
yeah,
2400 or whatever to get your max high level weapons. And they've boxed themselves into a corner in terms of design on this, because they've like committed to all the stuff that you get from dungeons coming from dungeons. So if it comes from a dungeon, how are you going to lock it behind a rating? Um, it
Yeah,
what they could do is give you a vendor, which it's a vendor. Give us a vendor, and then you can get if you get 2400 or 2800 or whatever the number is, then you can go and you can buy the equivalent of your mythic Zovastrum or your mythic
right.
Antumbra. That max eye level weapon or trinket. Um, and that gives you something that is like, if you really want to push that, you can get that. Um,
Right.
and then there really is like, you must go higher in order to get this stuff. It's not just like, because like you're right, I was talking about Valor, and because of how long the seasons go on, it isn't really a limiter. Like, you can reach the point that there's no more Valor cap. Um,
Right.
and
Effectively.
well, effectively, or in actuality, like in season three, they removed, or yeah, in season three they removed
Oh,
the
yeah, you're
Valor
right.
cap
At the end
partway
of it.
through, and in season two they removed it partway through. Season one was weird, but um, the um, at that point it is literally just like, you can spam twos until your eyes bleed and have 298 gear, which is
Yeah.
still sub mythic, but
Well, and but
it wouldn't be. I guess there is the rating requirement on upgrades too, right? You can't literally only do twos and have 298s right now. You have to
right.
do all the 15s in order to get your rating, and then you can get you know all
Yeah, but
298s by spamming twos.
it's for like, to me the analogy there is like, yeah, the ratings there, but it'd be like, to if there was a raid equivalent of like upgrades, right? It would be like, you just have
Yeah.
to kill Mythic Jailer once, and then you can do LFR, get the weapon, and like get some currency in LFR to then upgrade that weapon to Mythic item level. So like,
Counterpoint. Yeah, let's do that. um,
it's just, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Mythic Plus would be a lot cooler, at least in my mind, if it just dropped less loot like consistently. And that's my other harebrained idea, is that like, I talked to Emallson before the podcast about this, but it's the idea of like, you basically get one loot timed run per dungeon per week. And so like, you can run the dungeon as much as you want for non-loot, for timing, or if you want to practice and make sure you do it the right way, right? But then you lock in a key level and you lock in a time that says this is a loot run, and you get one shot at it. If you complete it and do it in time, you get all the loot from it. If you don't complete it, or if you, whatever it ends up being, however you want to do it, that becomes like your one run for loot from that dungeon per
yeah,
week, right? Which is very similar to like doing one boss per week for loot, right? In terms of
yeah,
like the mythic or whatever, that the lockout there. So that's my other harebrained idea. It's like to make Mythic Plus like its goal to be pushing things as high as you can, and like, not this sort of, to me, like loot pinata of like, oh, I don't have all mythic pieces yet, so I'll just run 4 15s this week,
yeah.
AFK most of them, like have my brain turned off and like just run through them.
But at the same time, like, having to do like this just reintroduces that like kata problem of getting on Tuesday and doing your badge runs.
Yeah.
You get on Tuesday
Yeah.
and you do your badge runs and you log out until raid.
Yeah, but like, as a raider, like, would I care about that, doing that? Right? Like, that's the other aspect of it, is like, this is mostly meant for like from like a person who just wants to do Mythic Plus and push that. And like, yeah, if you
The
wanna
problem is
if
those
you wanna do
people,
good,
they need other people to do those things with, right?
right, but
There's
that's like, but I think there's a population of people who just do Mythic Plus that's there. That's probably healthy enough to
I don't
support
think
that.
it's big enough to support that. So the issue, so at the high level, yes, there's enough people. The problem is none of those people exist from like key level 5, key level 20. That's all like casual people doing dungeons for fun, for loot, and raiders doing weekly keys whenever they can fit them in.
Yeah.
That's not people that are like dedicated Mythic Plus people, because those people are doing fives, 28s, and so you end up with the population problem where like at the top end it's fine because they have their own like self-contained key community, and then
Yeah.
at the bottom end it's relatively okay because people farm valor or whatever, maybe that gets changed. But then in the
Right.
middle, it's a wasteland. Everybody does their one of each dungeon for a week, and then they don't have any reason to do any more. And it's got to actually it's even worse than um it, it it isn't just that you have to get 8 in. You have to get a specific 8 in.
Yeah.
So if you've done 7 of them and you've only got one left, and your buddy's also done 7 of them, but it's a different 7, there's no reason for you to group up because one of you can't get.
Right. Right. Which is the same problem if you do a mythic raid with your mythic team, and then you kill all but one boss, and your buddy also did a mythic team raid with his mythic team,
Can't do
killed
it
all
with
with
you
one
because it's a
boss.
different lockout.
Like it's
I mean,
like
which is also
it's
the
a different
lockout.
dead boss.
The mythic
Yeah.
lockout thing is uh
It's frustrating. Yeah.
it's bad. It should not be a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I don't. Sorry, I was gonna say I don't
yeah,
know. I mean, I know my ideas are sort of out there in terms of
yeah,
they radically changed the way Mythic Plus works. I don't think the Blizzard will actually do any of this,
yeah,
but I think it would be interesting if they wanted to take some radical stances and basically make Mythic Plus like its own pillar in terms of like your PvP, your Mythic Plus, and your raids, right? But
yeah,
I agree, like what you brought up there, the progression, like of getting from like, hey, I want to start doing Mythic Plus, and like I agree with you. It's like the middle will be empty, right?
yeah.
So,
So like
yeah,
Schlim in chat is like fairly high level pusher and is so I'm gonna take a couple of their comments here.
yeah,
So like the issue for them is that they're sitting on 40,000 valor after upgrading everything, but can't actually upgrade it to something that's equivalent to a mythic item. You know, let
right,
alone let alone like an end mythic item, right? You can get to 298 sub mythic. It's less than 304. Um,
right.
and so do with that. And then so on the population thing, like you can kind of set the same thing that I was saying about like Peak land when there's their weekly. Um, you can more or less say the same thing about PvP. There's like the people that actually push rating and the people that only do it for their weekly conquest cap and gear. And there's one key difference there in that the weekly conquest cap you don't have to do like a specific thing for it. You just have to do enough of things for it, right?
That's true.
So
Yeah,
you can do games with one guy and then like log off for a few days and your buddy gets on and you go and you do keys or arenas with them, not arenas with them, and you get your conquest cap. And that's the idea of a valor, like the valor cap too. Except valor is infinitely worse than conquest because conquest lets you buy high level items.
yeah, yeah. And Valor won't. Yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit they could do, but I think the other problem too that this I think Mythic Plus always runs into is that it's smaller form PvE content. So
yeah,
like raiders will always do it. Like, and so like you have to balance that around it. It's
yeah,
not like there's very I'd say like unless you love World of Warcraft, there's probably a lot less overlap between raiders and PvP players at the high end. Um and like but Mythic Plus wise, there's probably a ton of overlap, or there is a ton of overlap.
yeah.
So
And like
yeah.
I think that they're on the right track with giving like you can with valor upgrade things to mythic eye level.
Yeah.
That's a step in the right direction. Um, it still doesn't solve the problem of items like Gavel and Japhis and Antumbra, and even Cash from Zymox or First Sigil from Pantheon existing in Raid and not having a real equivalent.
Yeah, but I mean you can make the same excuse for like Changeling from previous
The difference
seasons
is
or
everybody can get Changeling, not everybody can get a Mythic Gavel or a Mythic
well
Antumbra.
no. No, well, I think you're generalizing everyone there, right?
How?
Like you
Like
can get
it is
you can
very
get
easy to get the IO of for upgrading your changeling and then just spamming twos until you actually get enough valor to upgrade your change. Like that is not like obviously I'm speaking from the position of like a mythic raider, but we're talking about accessibility of like best in slot items, and I think if you're talking about best in slot items, then you have to be talking about it in the context of actually being serious about playing. Because getting best in slot, if you don't actually take the game seriously, just isn't.
right. Well, I agree, but that like I think in your case that goes both ways, right? Like if you're serious about pushing Mythic Plus and the best item you can get comes from a raid, you're
Yeah,
gonna find a Mythic raid to go into. So I don't. I don't think unique items are that big of a deal. Like,
I do think the like hard cap of the rewards being at, heroic is the problem. Because
well,
then
they're changing. I mean, they're changing that,
yeah,
right?
and
So
that
like
is
in
why
the
they're
new,
changing it. Yeah.
yeah, in like the new game, it's base mythic, which I think is fine. But yeah, and I guess Blizzard, I think always will lean in terms of like they tried this experiment back in what was it? Is it MOP that had 10 man rating that dropped similar item level to 25 mana, right? So they tried that idea
I think
of
Cat did it
like
too.
Cat might have been the first one of like having them do the same rewards, and it just doesn't like there's no incentive. Like you, I think there is a component of like organizing a larger group of people to be on the same page and do something as one versus like a small 5 man, right? And so like I don't know how you how Blizzard gets around that idea, but I think that
Yeah.
also plays into the fact that Mythic Plus just doesn't you can't just upgrade to like end boss
Right.
Mythic
And
type items in
I
Mythic
think
Plus.
the
So
key complaint is that there is a point where you surpass that extra difficulty from having to organize 20 people. Um, and the rewards don't
right,
scale up. You
right,
reach a point that it is harder than just doing, you know, mythic rating,
right.
but there's no rewards bump at that level. You get a title.
No, yeah.
The
And
title
I
does not
agree. I
help
mean, I
you
think
complete better keys.
yeah, no, and I agree. I think there is a key level where it makes sense. So it sounds like they're at least testing moving that up a bit, right?
Yeah.
Which is good. So
And like
um
what I would like to
sorry.
see is, they take this step. I don't think they're going to take another step for the launch of Dragonflight. But what I would like to see is another, at least another threshold where once you reach that point, you can start upgrading items to mid tier hero. And
You mean mid
then,
tier mythic?
yeah, mid tier mythic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then, maybe there is some like obscene threshold that like maybe only a few teams reach. Like, that lets you upgrade all of your stuff to the actual like end boss threshold, which would actually at that point be in some ways better than raid because you can't get, right now you can't. I mean, right now you can because it's season 4, but in a normal tier you can't get a end boss eye level at every slot. The items just don't exist.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so like I do think that there is a point that they set another IO threshold and they say, okay, here you go. You do this, you unlock Valor level 14 that puts it at mid here or mid mythic. Oh, and then there's another one beyond that that lets you put it to mid level mythic or end level
Uh-huh.
mythic. And like, I mean, it's no skin off my back if somebody is able to do 30s. If they then are able to get full like 311, whatever the equivalent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with you, to be completely honest with you. Like I
Yeah,
think
because there's like 20 people in the world.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean even if it was more, even if it was like plus 20s gave mid-tier mythic
Yeah,
this first tier
yeah,
and like it was 25s that were like the end tier bosses, right? Where
yeah.
the pool was a little bit larger. I think that's fine too. Um
They
but yeah,
have
I
to
mean I don't know.
be the one thing they have to be careful of is they cannot set that threshold so low that it is achievable for people that are not in that. And that's really
Right, like
where they get into really dangerous waters, I think.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like I like to be fair, personally, I should not be able to get max eye level mythic gear from doing the keys that I do
Yeah,
typically.
yeah.
Like I like
I shouldn't
use me
either.
as the use case. Yeah. So it's just like because I don't do 20s or even 25s, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's very much like if they set it to something that people can reasonably do as part of like if you're a mythic raider and you can expect that your whole team is able to complete whatever threshold that is, then the expectation, because the community's just like this, the expectation will become that you do that.
right,
And it's
exactly.
going to completely break.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
No, that's true. That's true. So I know we were almost out of time. I know we've been hammering this Mythic Plus topic for a
yeah, yeah,
while.
yeah.
I got to say my harebrained ideas. The one thing I wanted to, did you have any final points on the Mythic plus loot stuff? Other than it sounds like we both agree it's good. They might be able to take it further, but it's at
Yeah,
least a good starting point,
yeah.
right?
Like it's a step in the right direction. There are more steps that they can take, but it is a step in the right direction.
Cool. Cool. So the only final topic, which is really just a quick one, Blizzard did post sort of like a clarifying post on set bonuses. So along with some hot fixes coming in. So for monks specifically, the Windwalker set bonus did get updated. So the 4 set, instead of being, after you use 3 Rising Sun kicks or spinning crane kicks, your Fists of Fury will get a 5% stacking up to 3 times, like versatility increase. It's now just a flat 5% damage for each one of those stacks.
Okay.
So it's basically Fist of Fury does 15% more damage now if you stack that up to 3 times. So good. They basically just, the developer note was just like, we should probably just give you a flat damage increase as a DPS class versus just for a verse increase.
Yeah.
So good on them. Um, and then the other thing from a monk set bonus perspective is the Mistweaver 4-piece will now trigger from the Essence Font heal that's applied by Phalanx Stomp, which has been sort of I think, a common theme this expansion with Blizzard in that they basically want Essence Font and Phalanx Stomp to occupy the same space,
Right.
but do different things, right? Like
Yeah.
Essence Font much more is like your heal HPS focused ability. You
You're a
press Phalanx Stomp.
sprinkler and you sprinkle the raid, and Phalanx Stomp is like the group is stacked and you.
Exactly. Group is stacked, and there's enemy mobs that are stacked, so you do more
Yeah.
damage and healing to everything,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, oh, so sorry. So now, yeah, Phalanx Stomp will trigger 4-piece, which is a good change. I think that's always been that'll probably be our question moving forward. Is anytime we see something that says Essence Font, the question will always be, does Phalanx
Does
Stomp
Phalanx
also
Stomp also do it? Yeah.
trigger?
They
Yeah.
probably need to just come up with clear language around that, like making it say like Essence Font bolts or something, or maybe they just name it Essence bolts, and like Phalanx Stomp does Essence bolts, and Essence Font does Essence bolts.
Right. Yeah. So it triggers on both because they updated Font of Life, which is a talent that for each Essence Font bolt that hits, it reduces the cooldown of Thunder Focus T. So that now works with Phalanx Stomp bolts as they're applied, or
Right.
the Essence Font pods that get applied during Phalanx Stomp. So
Yeah.
they've upgraded sort of abilities across the board. 4 set will now trigger from Phalanx Stomp, which is cool. Um, so yeah, and then tier sets are live now. So if you want to go test them out, go test
Yep.
them out.
I wore mine for raid
Mistweaver
testing
1.
this week.
Mistweaver feels real good. Real good.
Honestly, couldn't even tell you that I had mine on, but I'm sure the numbers were there.
Yeah. There's been some weird tuning stuff with Mistweaver. Just numbers are lower this week, but nothing seems to have changed. So
Yeah.
we are unsure of what is happening, but
Tuning
but in
pads.
general, yeah, random, no, not in patch notes or any ability tuning pass somehow. But
Yeah.
yeah. But other than that, tier sets are out there, so go test them. Mistweaver is still amazingly good. So better than everybody else. And I think that's it for this week, unless you had any other final points to
No,
cover.
I think that pretty much covers it. There's a few more like little loot things that we could talk about, but I think we've pretty well said our piece about loot in general.
Yeah.
So that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this and you want to support the other work that we do over at the Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come join the Discord. That is the best place to come and talk about talent builds, talk about how your new set works, figure out all these interactions between things like Phalanx Stomp and things that say Essence Font on them.
It's real convoluted.
and yeah, so come and hang out in the Discord. It's a good place to be. But that is it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we see you next week.
Bye.